I would like to call to order this meeting of the Conservation Commission of the Town of Harwich, Massachusetts for February 7th, 2024. The meeting is being held in the Griffin Room of Town Hall in Harwich, and people who would like to either call in or participate virtually via computer may do so, and the information as to how to key into this meeting is shown on the town website. I would like to begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like Wayne to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Wayne.
Yep.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is a continuation of the hearings for the notice of intent for 9 and 11 Herring Run, map 3, parcels X3-2 and X3-3, SE 32-2546. Is there anybody here to speak for the applicant or the applicant being here this evening? Okay, whoever is here, if you could come to the table here. And I guess we don't, Amy, we don't have a microphone on that table?
We can move the microphone on that stand to that table.
Okay, so either you can sit at the table or if you want to
Lindsay,
use...
don't worry about that. I'm going to put this one on. There's an extra one on
Okay,
the table.
there's an extra, let's put an extra one on the table.
That way, if anybody wants to stand, they can.
Yeah, so you can either stand at the podium or sit at the table and use the microphone. Since this is a continuation of a number of hearings that we've had on this matter, I would like to ask the applicant, if it's possible for now, just to limit the opening reports to any changes or new information that hasn't been discussed at previous public hearings. We will then go to comments from the members of the board, comments from the Conservation Commission staff, and any comments from the public. The applicant will then have ample opportunity to respond to any comments or present any additional information that they feel is helpful to their case. So with that in mind, if the applicant could please, come to either the table or the microphone.
They're online, Mr. Chair.
They're online. Okay, well then, whoever is speaking for the applicant online, if you could proceed.
Yes, certainly. Good evening. Cole Bateman from Ty and Bond, formerly Coastal Engineering, representing the applicants Dave Mogan and Dan Corey for their project here on 9/11 Herring Run. Also joining this evening are, as a project team, we got Glenn Wood from Reuben Rudman, Paul Mancuso from BSC Group, and we also have sitting at the table Lindsay Strode from Cape Organics, and I believe the applicants themselves might be in the audience too. So we're excited to have a full crew here tonight to present our additional materials. Our additional materials are a long time coming. We believe that what we will be presenting tonight will show the commission the progress we've made towards this application and the great improvements of it in regards to the resource areas as opposed to the previous proposed plans and narratives. So with that being said, I'll please share my screen and start off with a brief overview of a summary of events of how we got here today, and then I'll quickly move into the revised materials. So just touching back at the beginning of the project, this project was initially presented to the Waterways Committee back on March 9th of 2022. The proposed project was originally in a separate location in a more disturbed area of the site where there's fresh groundwater pouring out. When the pier was proposed in that location to the Waterways Committee, they rejected it, saying that it would be a navigational hazard and that is why we moved it to the location where it is today, which is an approved waterways location. Further, on October 16th, we submitted our notice of intent application to the Conservation Commission, and we were heard at the first meeting on November 15th, where we presented our case and took some feedback regarding some of the DMF questions and comments, as well as comments from the commission itself. And then we further presented additional materials on November 29th, and we were heard again on December 6th. From December 6th, we have continued, and then on January 31st, we provided additional materials, which consisted of a revised dock length and fixed pier length, as well as some applicable materials towards our variance requests for this project. And then lastly, we submitted some additional materials back on February 1st. So I'll please respond to some of the commission's initial comments first here from the December 6th hearing, because those were fresh in our responses. So the first comment we got from the commission was that the mitigation plan was lacking in enough information to review the project. Since then, we have greatly improved on our mitigation plan. What's going to be presented here tonight, which Lindsay will get further into, is a revised mitigation area of close to 5,000 square feet, which is an 8.6 to 1 ratio compared to the 4 to 1 ratio that's required for work within the resource areas here. We're also excited to present tonight that we're proposing a salt marsh mitigation ratio as well. I believe that is 5.8 or so compared to the area of the dock that's over the salt marsh, to a total square footage of salt marsh mitigation of 1,830 square feet. And like I said, Lindsay will go further into that. The second was comparing this proposed dock to another project, the Mayor Dock, which I believe is in Witchmere Harbor. And to the commission's knowledge, this might be the only other project that has requested dock variance for the length. And it was probably for a different reason that we're presenting tonight, and that has been also included within our variance requests. Well, what we're presenting tonight, which we'll go further into in our dock plans, is a pier length which is still requires a variance, however, is much more compliant to the intent of the the regulations for the length beyond mean high water. And like I said, I'll show that in the plans upcoming. Next comment was regarding the impact on the salt marsh area. If there are further questions on that, Paul could handle those, but in summary is that this project is not substantially contributing to the any commercial species of shellfish. I believe if we do the math, it's about 1 shellfish per 27 square feet. So that's a very, very widespread shellfish commercial species area. In addition to that, there's heavy metals present on the project site, which we're proposing to dredge a portion of to remove. And then lastly, a new aspect of this project is a contribution to the Shellfish Fund to seed other areas in town where shellfish are much more valuable than this project site, which has been documented within the shellfish report to really not be substantially contributing to any shellfish propagation. And then last was a comment regarding a salt marsh buffer that was questioned whether or not we can remove, and the answer is no. We've reached out to the Division of Marine Fisheries, and they would not support any project within the land containing shellfish that has less than a 25-foot buffer to a salt marsh. So with that being said, I'll move over to our proposed dock changes. I'm going to skip right to the plans here. So the revised plans you're seeing tonight show a substantially shorter fixed pier length. What we're proposing is a fixed pier that is within 80 feet from mean high water, so only the seasonal portions of the dock, which include the gangway and the floats, would be beyond the 80 feet mean high water. Uh, Like I said, we still require a variance according to the Harwich Wetlands regulations. However, the intent of the Harwich Wetlands regulation when it comes to the length beyond mean high water, according to our research, and with the assistance of Amy, which we sincerely appreciate, proves to us that the intent of the 80 feet beyond mean high water is almost purely navigational, if not fully purely navigational related. We hope that tonight Amy will read a strongly supporting letter from John Rendon, the harbor master, of how our project meets the navigational concerns, which largely are reflected within the regulation for length beyond mean high water, and how our project should be construed to be supportive of the regulations. Let's see. Next was a change in the, I guess I said the mitigation for salt for the shellfish. We are proposing to seed other areas, which is a great benefit because this area is not supportive of quahogs and other species like that. We are supporting the oysters, which have been found in this area, by providing these oyster bags. So we will be mitigating and improving the oyster habitat by installing these bags in the marsh, as well as mitigating the other species which could be found in close proximity to this project site of quahogs, by seeding other areas in town. Other changes that I'll move to now, Lindsay, coming to you, is our substantial change to our mitigation plan. So I'm going to pull up the plans, and Lindsay, if you could please read through them, I think that would be great. The changes here to our mitigation plan.
So as you can see,
Excuse me, could you just identify yourself for the record,
sorry.
please?
Lindsay Strode, Cape Organics for the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
As you can see along the northern property, we've got an enlarged area landward of the top of the high marsh. We're also in meeting with Amy on site, and some of the concerns that were voiced was landward migration of the marsh. And there's a couple areas both on the northern and southern properties that would lend themselves very well to accommodating that. There was some previous mitigation on the southern property for some construction a number of years ago. We planted a number of beach plum that are just too tight, and they're in the area where, should sea level continue to rise, would not survive. So the idea there is to relocate those to more appropriate elevations on either or both properties, and supplement those areas with high marsh grass species, particularly Spartina patens, salt marsh hay, spike grass, and some sea lavender. The other aspect of that is that just at the southern point of the south property, there is an area of salt marsh that has been degraded, and we would be looking to replenish that and replace that with active low salt marsh, consistent with what we've come before you folks and approved in the past. It's worked well, and we don't see any reason why it shouldn't work again there. So with that being said, our areas of salt marsh restoration are going to significantly improve the ecology in the area.
Just for a key on the plan here, the pink areas are the areas with salt marsh mitigation, and as Lindsay pointed out, which I zoomed into earlier, this is the low marsh area, which is being mitigated as well. So retouching back on our mitigation calcs, Lindsay, I don't know if you want to read it. So it's a 5.9 to 1 salt marsh ratio of what we're improving compared to the square footage of dock that is over the salt marsh. That is in addition to meeting all the performance standards within the Harwich wetland regulations, including height above marsh, deck board, spacing, among the other applicable regulations. So this is, again, in addition to what's already required by the regulations. We're going above and beyond it to actually provide specifically salt marsh restoration for those areas of the dock that are over the salt marsh. Let's see. I think that does it. So a closing summary here on my part before I ask my colleagues if they want to speak would be that with the improvement of the salt marsh, the very vast mitigation ratio that the applicants are providing, way above the required 4-to-1 ratio, by mitigating the shellfish area by removing heavy metals, contributing to the shellfish fund so more sustainable areas can be planted. We believe that this project is a net positive project in the resource areas, regardless of the 2 variances that we're requesting. So, Glenn or Paul or anybody else, is there anything to add?
Glenn Wood, Ribbon and Rubbin. Thanks, Cole. We submitted a letter also to the commission, and we're focusing on again, the length variance that we need here. And in reaching out to John Rendon, as well as in discussions with Amy, it seems very clear that the 80-foot length is a design standard associated with navigational conflict issues. And that's how it was created. It has nothing to do with environmental issues. And in the email letter that John sent to Amy and the commission, where he fully supports the project, as does the Waterways Committee, he again states that length issue, in his view, historically was created relative to navigational issues and not environmental. Nonetheless, I think with the additional significant salt marsh mitigation, which this commission really has never seen to this extent before, we think that our project as a common dock goes well above any mitigation that any of their dock has come before this commission before on, including on the Herring River. So we look forward to your comments tonight and comments from Amy as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments, and also I appreciate the fact that you pretty much did limit it to the changes to your proposal and to any new information. That's very helpful. Now I would like to go to comments from our board, but before I do that, I'd like to ask Amy for her analysis of the present project as it stands.
Sure. Through this project, myself as well as the applicant did research as far back as we could go about where the history of the 80-foot length maximum that we have past mean high water, where that came from. And we went back as far as we possibly could. It did stem from a waterways construction criteria, from what we can tell. I went to try to go back farther to see when that waterways regulation was put into place and could not find that, but went back into the 90s to find the information that we could through minutes, town meeting warrants, things like that. And while it doesn't come right out and say it has nothing to do with environment, it's basically silent on that. It only talks about the navigational aspects. So I'm not going to say it has nothing to do with the environmental, but I'm going to say that it focused mainly on the navigational aspects from what information was available, again, in town meeting warrants, as well as old minutes and things like that. There was a letter or an email I received on this past Monday from the harbor master supporting the project in terms of navigation. If Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to read it, I'd be happy to. The commission was provided it. It's your purview.
Basically, the Waterways Commission approved the project, is that correct?
Waterways approved it, as did John Rendon, and the only other thing is that I'll read the last part. Recent inquiries as to the origin and purpose of the regulation pertaining to the limit of structure extending more than 80 feet from mean high water, and unfortunately, I do not have historical records that would adequately address it. However, from my perspective as harbor master, I have always viewed the intent and purpose of the regulation as one to ensure navigable safety of the waterway.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. I don't think we need the rest of the
Okay.
letter read at this meeting, but I would like to note that that should be included in the record of the meeting.
It will be.
Thank you very much.
So the request for variance is rather large. It's 32 feet seasonally, beyond mean high water, and does include dredging of less than 100 cubic yards in order to achieve their 3 feet of required depth around all sides of the float at mean low water. You have to excuse me, I'm dealing with a bit of a migraine here, so I'm trying to fight through it. So if I'm a little slow, I apologize. So, in addition, what they're proposing to do is shellfish mitigation in the way of either they themselves or having the Natural Resource Department contribute $2,000 worth of seed shellfish, which is our equivalent of 1 year of shellfish seeding, to the Herring River in more appropriate areas than this site. Installation of oyster bags along fringe edges of marsh in an area that is degraded for reasons we're not exactly sure. There is a lot of freshwater seep in that area. There's no salt marsh. It wouldn't be purely in the freshwater area. It would be where there's enough saline in order to sustain oysters. And when we went on the site, I remember saying at a meeting, one of my main concerns was degradation to salt marsh with such a large structure. 80 feet of it would be over viable salt marsh. And I had concerns about that, even though it met the construction standards, being that it was high enough over the salt marsh, as well as this deck spacing was adequate, what they proposed. Still, studies do show that while there may be less damage to marsh, that there is still some compromising of salt marsh due to the structure, due to shading and things like that, in terms of its productivity. So I instructed them to see if there was any way that could be improved upon. And what they came back with was, and I met out on the site to see it for myself, the area on the southern property, which I believe is number 9. It's very flat up from the marsh. It really only raises in height no more, I would say, than a foot from the edge of salt marsh to where they have some upland type plantings. And the marsh itself is already trying to migrate landward there. There's different species that are starting to come into what was historically upland. And it remains flat for quite a while, and that was the pink area on the south side there, where they're proposing to remove the beach plum, which in time will likely be compromised due to saltwater inundation, transplant those elsewhere higher up on the property, and then let the marsh come in as it wants to, as well as supplement it with higher marsh materials. The state, DEP, as well as Chapter 91 is putting a big push on climate change adaptations. I've been participating in a lot of their public hearings on this recently, and they're highly favoring projects where applicants will allow or help marsh to be able to migrate. They're putting a big focus on that. So on this property here, that they have the opportunity to do that, as well as filling in some areas of degraded marsh, as Mr. Strode said as well. So taking into account it may not be fully viable immediately, their ratio is 5-to-1 for new potential area of salt marsh versus potential impacted area. It is within land containing shellfish, and there were shellfish found on the shellfish survey. Our regulations, do say no new structures within shellfish, map shellfish habitat. Most of the shellfish were found, most if not all, were found landward of the dredge footprint. Not to say that there's not gonna be potential impact there, but again, the shellfish seeding, I do view dredging as having a small improvement here in that dredge footprint for shellfish in the future. I said shellfish seeding, oyster bags, and dredging. Let's see. I think that is essentially what I wanted to say. So all in all, the project doesn't fit perfectly in our bylaws, but my recommendation is approval under the Wetlands Protection Act and the bylaw. I do think the benefits outweigh the costs, and I see the potential of improvement to resource areas here, even with the proposed structure. So yes.
Okay,
that's my-
thank you very much, Amy, and thank you for that in-depth analysis of what's going on at this.
Does that mean I talk too much?
No, that means we appreciate all that information. Okay, now I'd like to ask for comments from members comments or questions from members of the board, and I'll start with Mark.
Thank you. No, I agree with what Amy had to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Wayne?
I agree with Amy also.
Okay, Sophia?
I agree with Amy. I think for me, the scale of the mitigation plantings and just the sharing of the dock is something I think we should really encourage. So I agree with Amy.
Okay, thank you. Brad?
Okay, I'm gonna step out of the consensus and not agree with Amy.
That's okay.
I think, respectfully speaking, I think that your previous recommendations were to not support this, and I don't see structural changes that would lead us to change that. So I don't agree with your analysis. It's a very concerning project to me, and I want to explain why. I think everyone knows that I don't support the project, but I want to talk about why. So I hope I have a couple minutes, Mr. Chair.
I'll give you a couple of minutes, Brad, but what I would like to ask you, just like I asked the applicant, is if you could focus on the new information as opposed to rehashing what we discussed at the previous hearings.
I guess I object to that a little bit because it's been, 4 continuances? We haven't had a hearing since November, so it's been a long time.
No, December.
December?
December 6th was the last hearing.
So there's been a number. Well, I'll still be somewhat brief. So
Okay, that's fine, then go ahead, Brad.
If you look at this stretch of the Herring River between Route 28 and Lowell County Road, there's 4 major meanders that stick out with extended salt marsh. It's shallow at the apex, and there are no docks on those meanders, and for a very good reason, because they don't conform well to our regulations. People in the past that have tried to build there were advised by the conservation agent that it did not conform. So I think these are very sensitive areas. They have a long distance that you have to go across with a dock, and therefore that's why this dock needs a variance. And then you encounter shallow water that needs something to happen because it doesn't fit into our regulations of having 3.0 feet at mean low water. So to me, there's red flags right off the bat. It needs 2 variances. I don't believe we should be giving variances, or at least they should be very uncommon for water-dependent structures. These are all impactful. If you go around to Herring River, you can look at every dock and you can see the impacts. They are obvious, they're apparent. On the west side, they're even more apparent because when you have docks in an east to west orientation with the sun going to the west, you have more shading. So all those docks that are there now have an impact to the salt marsh. The Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaws say there could be no impact to salt marsh. No loss of productivity, no impacts that can last for a year. So to me, I don't know why we're giving variances for this type of an impact. So I have much concern. My top concern is probably impacts to salt marsh and relaxing a variance on an 80-foot structure over a salt marsh. So that's number 1. Number 2, shellfish habitat. I think people need to look closely at the shellfish survey. We've never seen one like it. The spaces between transects, we've never seen such large spaces. 25 feet between transect and then 15 feet between plots in the transect. Very large distances not surveyed. And so I went out there and I dug a couple times. There are low concentrations of cohogs, but still it adds up. And we keep hearing that there's not many shellfish, but if you don't sample a lot, there's still shellfish there. If you find one, there's a lot more than you'd ever expect. Secondly, they found only 9 oysters on the edge of the marsh. They had 20 transect plots that coincided with that area of the marsh, that edge. I can't believe they only found 9 oysters. There are so many hundreds of oysters there. Every shellfish survey I've seen in my 15 years on this committee have been negatively biased. There hasn't been one that's been positively biased. It's an enormous concern that I have with the information we're receiving. And we're hearing this isn't a shellfish habitat. Well, it clearly is. Quahogs are there, oysters are there, and we have a bylaw that says you cannot put new structures in shellfish habitat. So 2 big concerns. The other ones are not as significant, but they're still there. Water depth at mean low water. Our prior regulations were 2.5 feet at mean low water, and you couldn't dredge, or at least that was the practice for many years. We didn't allow dredging to reach that. Now we have 3.0 feet, and it's silent on whether you can dredge or not. In my view, my interpretation is if it's viable habitat, which it is, you shouldn't dredge to receive that 3.0 feet. And the last one is coastal bank. We allow alteration of coastal bank for these projects. This one has a pristine bank right now. What has happened on the Herring River is we allow docks to go in my time, and it's not a full footprint on the coastal bank. What happens there exceeds what's permitted. It's natural for property owners to want to expand, to want to improve their view. You see tremendous alterations to coastal banks with these dock and pier projects. It doesn't mean this one's supposed to do that. It doesn't mean it's allowed to do that. That's what's happened on the Herring River in my tenure. So to me, I don't support this project. I don't know why we're giving multiple variances on water-dependent structures in the Herring River at this point. I do appreciate the shared dock concept, but 2 more boats in the Herring River. So we're not even talking about cumulative impacts. The Herring River is choked off from human activity, boating, and alterations to the resource areas. So it's a nice concept. I'm afraid I can't give too many points for that because it's more activity, more boats in a very busy section of the river. The last point I want to make is on the length issue. We heard it's all about navigation. That's not the way it's been interpreted by this commission for 15 years. The length of a dock over salt marsh is proportional to impact to the salt marsh. So navigation may be a part of it. It's part of the wetlands protection bylaws. So we need to interpret in terms of ecological impacts. So the length of a dock, to me, very much is proportional to the impacts to salt marsh. Therefore, much bigger concern for this commission than discussion on navigation, which is beyond the purview of the harbor master's office. I mean, the wetlands protection bylaws. So again, concerned about the information we're receiving, and I don't support this project at this location.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Brad. Now, from my point of view, having reviewed the information and listening to all the comments, both Amy's and Brad's comments, I think where I stand at the present time is that I agree with Amy's comments. Now, what I would like to do before we proceed is see if there's anybody in the audience here that has any comments or would like to speak on this matter. Seeing none, is there anybody else online, in addition to the applicant, who would like to speak on this matter or have any questions? Hearing none, I would like to just ask the applicant if the applicant has any desire to give any brief comments with regard to the comments that they have heard tonight. And hearing.
Thank you for the opportunity. We do not.
You do not. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I appreciate your being brief. Then what I would like to do is see if there's anybody who would like to make a motion on this matter. And what I would like to do, if anybody is ready to make a motion on this matter, is they would just take a quick look before making that motion at some of the suggestions that Amy has made with regard to what needs to be incorporated in those motions, no matter which way the motion is going to go, so that the motion could be as inclusive as possible. So is there anybody on the board who is ready to make a motion on this matter? Okay, hearing that nobody I would like to make a motion that we approve the project under the Water Wetlands Protection Act and Harwich Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and grant the 32-foot length variant past mean high water and for a variance for a new structure within the mapped shellfish habitat. Now, what we would like to do, in addition to that motion, since there is a significant amount of shellfish were found by numerous shellfish surveys, all in the vicinity around the approved dock, as part of this approval, we would like to condition it that the owner shall have a shellfish survey done each year for 3 years, starting the year the dock is installed in the summer months. A paper copy of this report shall be provided to the Conservation Commission annually. In addition, if after 1 year it is found by the survey that there have been degradation to the shellfish habitat as a result of the dock installation, additional shellfish mitigation shall be required. This is to be determined by the Conservation Commission or its agent, as well as the town shellfish constable, after review of the findings from the monitoring reports. So that is the total of my motion. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion among the board members? Brad, proceed.
Yeah, pertaining to the shellfish survey, what is our intention here? To replicate the one that was done before? I'm a little concerned about, again, the integrity of shellfish surveys that have come before this committee. Knowing when it's gonna happen, knowing in advance, going out, taking photographs in advance of the location.
We could certainly clarify that in the conditions, should this get approved, and abide by the shellfish survey standards the commission comes to expect. And that language was taken from another recent dock project that we had approved, and I thought was applicable for this
But maybe,
project.
Brad, as Amy has suggested in the order of conditions, we could say that the shellfish survey should be done with a methodology approved by the Conservation Commission.
As existing methodology or methodology for that particular case.
For that particular case.
Okay, and then we can
It
talk
can be
about-
further fleshed out,
We can
yeah.
talk
Yeah,
about
we
it
could
later.
do that in the order of
Right.
conditions.
I think notifications are important, I think photographs are
Right.
important.
Yep,
No,
so
I
that's
agree,
some,
Brad.
should it move forward, that you would be able to make comments on the conditions?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, are there any further discussions before we go to a vote? Okay, due to the importance of this matter and the fact that this has been going on for a long period of time, I would like to have the vote done by a roll call vote. So I will start with Sophia,
Aye, Sophia Pilling.
Brad,
Nay.
okay, and you,
Roll call, really?
yeah, roll call on this one.
Brad Chase.
Aye, Jim Atkinson.
Aye, Wayne Colson.
I, Mark Coleman.
Okay, the project is approved. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you again for
Thank you.
keeping,
Thank you.
thank you again for keeping all your presentations
Thank you, Amy.
reasonably short.
Thank you.
Okay. We're now ready to move on to the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is, again, a request for a notice of intent for 4 Cottage Avenue, map 6, parcel G1-5-2. Since the following item on the agenda is basically the same substantively, if there's no objections, I would like to combine the discussion into one discussion. And so I would also like to open the hearing for, for 5 Cottage Avenue, map 6, parcel G2-1. Are the applicants for those two matters available and ready to present?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would it be better for you to have me at the podium or here?
You can sit at the
Okay.
table as long as you're near the speaker. Could you identify yourself for the record, please?
I will. I am Bob Perry. The company's Cape Cod Engineering Incorporated, and we are working with the Sullivan family and the Harrises, who are long-term owners of 4 Cottage Avenue. That's the project you announced first. And because we do have a system project with 5 Cottage Avenue, the Costellos are not able to be here tonight.
That's all right.
So we're here on their behalf. So, just give you a summary of the environment there. We have Windermere Beach, which is east of Allen's Harbor, is an area that's been seawalled for many decades. And the particular seawall we're dealing with here is a very old rusted steel sheet pile wall that finally yielded with the storm that we had back. I think it took 2 storms to get it to move, December and January. And the beach has suffered over the years from the interruption of the littoral sediment drift. Back in the mid-90s, I was actually involved with some of the distribution of the large-scale, large-volume dredge material that came here. Most of that is gone. And in our work with both the Sullivans and the Harrises and Costellos, we initially prepared a bulkhead plan for this location, which is a vertical seawall that would replace the bulkhead. And in the course of reviewing really what would be a better technology with current thinking, as far as wave reflection, just the general aesthetic, the continuity which is on either side of this property, these properties, we came to the conclusion that a rock revetment would be a better, less impactive, at least hydraulically, structure. I failed not to mention that we have a 30-foot way between us, and so the project is continuous through that. So you can see on the plan behind me, I don't know if you put plans up, but we have a fairly straightforward revetment construction that would integrate itself into the revetments on both sides. We would take it to an elevation that would basically match on either side. We are splitting the difference best we can to encroach into the applicant's land mass, which many people would object to, but it's necessary because the revetment takes up a lot more land than a bulkhead. We had a lot of buildup from the dredge material back in the 90s, and that has all been wiped clean. So we have a very low beach deposit today. We expect some of that's going to recover. And the toe of this revetment would be well below that beach, and we are extending seaward from the face of the steel wall, but a good measure of that's going to be below grade. The effort here is to match the alignment of the revetments that are already there. Full disclosure, looking into damage to a revetment to the west, so there may be some further work. I think you're going to see a fairly good collection of future work coming in from the coast of Harwich here and there. But of course, with this one, we're at 4 and 5 Cottage Avenue. So to discuss the work effort, we put into the notice of intent a work protocol that would describe how this job would be done. It's convenient in the sense that the applicants have the rights and basically the ownership of that strip of the unconstructed way, which is Cottage Avenue. And to do this job, we basically pull the steel and create an earthen ramp down to the beach, where the job would then proceed in the most practical way, just face the project and install the materials. The job would start from both sides. Basically, you got to choose one side, work toward the center, go to the other end, work toward the center, and then the final 12 feet or so would be constructed as the crew basically backs out. Future beach nourishment, if it were to be done, and of course, there is a sediment deficit here. A lot of it just comes in from Bank Street, but the long term, it's possible to bring it directly in over Locust and pile it up and get yourself down to the beach. But we do have a beach nourishment component to this project where the face of the revetment will be buried at the end of the job and let that material meet itself into the beach system with successive storm tides. There's nothing really unique about this. It's a stone revetment that would be built as well as we can design and supervise. There is a strip of vegetation that's proposed at the top. There is today on both sides kind of a fringe of vegetation. I think a lot of that's been lost at number 4. If you've been over there, you saw that it yielded. We've lost quite a bit of material in the backfill. So there's a 4-foot strip proposed at the top of the revetment. The stairways are going to be realigned. They can no longer really go down the side because there's a sloped face of the stone. So both of the stairways that are there today, one is within Cottage Avenue, the other's for number 5. Both those stairways today, they come out on a landing and then they go down parallel with the shore. The new proposal would be open riser stairs that would be framed and clipped to the stone face so that they would go very close to the stone face and just take the pedestrians down, straight down to the beach. So that's the summary of this. I think it's about a 5 to 6 week job in order for it to be done. We don't have a construction schedule, but the order of conditions is good for 3 years. We do have a vertical seawall that has yielded. And one of the things that I was hoping to have included in the order of conditions would be an allowance that some anchors, some temporary anchors, could just be placed on the yielded segment of the seawall where a small backhoe could come in, probably use a horizontal timber and some good-sized washers and basically send a couple of helical screws that would hold that wall so that if we were delayed in construction through the summer, everybody's busy, so that would just be something that we would want to do. It'd all be taking place from the upland, but machine would reach over and send those anchors in. But otherwise, I think at this point, I'll just try to answer any questions that you have. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, thank you very much. Amy, I would like to ask for your analysis on this matter.
Thank you. The existing bulkheads are licensed and permitted. They've been there since the 70s, but there was likely a wall that preceded them. As Mr. Perry stated, the wall has been compromised. They're proposing to go with a revetment. My question is the plans and the narratives are a little confusing in that it appears that you're asking for what we call a rough face revetment, but then in a description, it states like the assembly is to minimize porosity. And I want to ensure that it's a rougher face revetment, which would reflect, or not, which would absorb wave energy rather than reflect it, so I just want that
The
clarification.
porosity is just the inside. I mean, the thing that causes revetments to settle and change their shape is the inside, the chip structure can settle in storms, not unlike a package of sand. So it's the face we have a roughness specified on the face. We're not looking for a complete points-up wall. We want something to be neat and uniform, but it's not going to be a flat-faced wall.
Okay,
It will, vary on a half a foot to a foot and a half.
okay. That should be sufficient, yeah, as long as there's some dimension.
Yeah, I think quality gets sacrificed sometimes when they're too flat-faced. You find that the point of the rock can go in, and then you have greater porosity.
Okay. Let's see, no stairs are proposed for number 4. The owners of this house use the stairs on the easement that they own half of. The new revetment does have a larger footprint than the bulkhead does. And typically, the commission would require a 4-to-1 mitigation ratio for new structures in a resource area such as this. I think you may consider relaxing this a bit. As the proposed revetment environmentally is gonna be better than the bulkhead that it's replacing. It will absorb wave action rather than reflecting it, and sending it down to any neighbors that might not be so protected. The crevices in the rock do provide some, albeit minimal, habitat as opposed to a bulkhead. And sand nourishment, know that you do sand nourishment now from dredging when you can get it. When you can get it, sorry. But it will stay a little bit longer typically with a rock wall because you put it on the face or on the top of the rock wall and it the waves will gradually trickle it down rather than it, you put sand out there now and it can be gone almost immediately. So, it's not perfect, but it is an improvement. I didn't have a chance to calculate the volume that would typically be required annually. That's set by the annual erosion rate, by the length of the wall, and that's certainly something we could calculate. It is something that when projects either to construct new or to reconstruct come in for coastal engineered structures that I'm recommending. Again, because by not nourishing, the structure's blocking sand nourishment coming down. And sand is what you need in order to build beach elevation. So as you lose beach elevation by having these structures there, you have more storm damage and whatnot, because the beach gets lower and lower and the waves keep coming higher and higher. I don't foresee it being a massive amount because your frontage is not that great. So we would if approved, that would be calculated as an annual requirement. And that could be as part of mitigation for this as well. Let's see. They propose to relocate an existing deck at the top of the bank at number 4, and a bit landward. If approved, I recommend benchmarks being installed in this wall and one on the adjacent at number 5 in order to monitor beach elevation over time. Probably an annual check of beach elevations there, and annually by a set date. And I would recommend approval of the project with those conditions.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. I'll now call for any comments from members of the commission. I'll start with Mark.
I have no comments, thank you.
Wayne?
Only question I have, Bob, is do you have any idea how deep those sheets are going down?
We were puzzled at that, as anybody would be, and when it yielded, it told me that they're not that deep, because
You planning on digging them out, digging out in the front and then grabbing them and ripping them up?
they've got to come out.
Yeah.
Yep. A bulkhead, we thought of maybe going seaward of them, but once they started going, I said, that's a practical thing to pull out of there.
Yeah.
We lost 3 feet in beach elevation in a month this year.
Right. I've been measuring it over there. It was shocking, and you'll get a little back.
A couple
but-
years ago, too. We lost more, so, yeah.
I've
More
built
steel.
quite a few of these in my career, and looks like a pretty simple plan, pretty good plan.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Brad?
Yeah, a couple of questions just to confirm what I think I heard. So the top of the revetment will come right up against the neighboring property's existing stone revetment.
Yeah, there'll
Yep.
be, we will search for, I actually did the one to the east at I think it's 4 Lincoln, or it's Lincoln Avenue. And Robert Hour's company built it, actually. And there's filter fabric there. I think I've seen some fabric in the segment on the other side, but we kind of have to integrate these right there at the lot line.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not at all familiar with this process, but after the last series of storms, you could see a lot of damage where you would have a transition from one water control structure to another.
Well, and that's why trying to keep somewhat similar in terms of how things are constructed. Obviously, we don't want mortar now, but
Right.
is key because if you have a seam, the water likes to find it.
Yep. And I guess the other point is probably just more conceptual on the mitigation. It is a big footprint of new stone, and so I just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with what's proposed. It's a 4-foot planted strip along the
An
top.
annual
and
sand
the
nourishment.
sanding. I think I'm much more interested, the sanding is almost like a responsibility of the project. I'm not sure if that's mitigation or not in my mind. The 4-foot strip, I think, is valuable. How does that match up to the square footage, Amy, do you know?
It doesn't. I mean, the width. We're talking, I mean, above the ground, it's probably 10 feet wide. So it doesn't perfectly equate to
Right.
that.
And any discussion, this is our first hearing, right? Yep, any discussion on moving lawn back? Is that put out at all, or discussed?
I did make it known with Mr. Perry that the commission may look towards additional mitigation, because we do typically require 4 to 1. Here, as it was replacing a pre-existing permitted structure with something a little bit better, all things considered, said maybe you'd relax a little bit, but to be prepared to have a discussion about additional mitigation.
Right. Yeah, so I guess I'm putting that to the commissioners if they, I think it's a good solution for the situation at this site, what you're proposing, so I don't object to that, but maybe a little more quantified approach on mitigation. And maybe there's an opportunity here to have a little more naturalization of that top of the slope, and maybe a little more than the 4 foot, either plantings or reduction in cultured lawn, landscape lawn. Again, it's really a discussion point.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Sophia?
I'm with Brad here. I think, will there be any disturbance? Like, so is there, I'm sorry, I didn't make it to the site. There are plants there now, is that right?
They've been damaged. There's rugosa rose on the
Okay.
east at number 5, and it's kind of very damaged at number 4, but there was a slope there, and it was because the backfill had settled. So what we would be putting in there, I don't think it would, I don't know how you feel about rugosa rose, it's naturalized, not native, but obviously something that's acceptable to you on the native side would be what goes in there. And, it's better to get some beach grass in there initially, and some shrub groupings that would be suitable for that area, beach plum possibly, in areas where, they're not going to affect the view or get too much salt burn, because you are right there. This area has been devastated by the interruption of sediment. If you ever look at Google Earth and you see there's acres and acres of buildup on the west of Allen Harbor. And here, we've decided that the revetment, where it's significantly better than a bulkhead. And so if the type of dredge disposal could occur here that happened in 1994, we could be growing dunes on the face of this revetment. So there's an opportunity to do that. Harvesting sand to build the beach at the face of the toe of the revetment would be some form of effort that I know the applicant would like to make. And the upper area landward of the crap, 4 feet is what we proposed, and I could see it getting a little wider because the shrubbery and grass tends to grow out. But we felt that the collective project, beach nourishment, a much, much better structure that takes away their land, which was a big discussion I had to have with them to get them to this point where we have the better item than the bulkhead. We considered that a form of mitigation, but I think the 4 or 5 foot band is what's there today. And the lawn is not your turf lawn with fertilizers. It's very, very natural but crusty summer Cape Cod lawn. And we're trying to sort of preserve some of that land so that it can be utilized, because they're losing some.
Okay, thank you. I think if there's going to be disturbance anyway, obviously it's nice to see natives put back in. I think that there's, merit to everything that you've said. I think I like to see, some sort of enrichment in terms of habitat. if possible, and it seems like in this case, that's pretty doable, so that would be
Yeah,
my preference.
in my travels, I see the strips approximately 5 feet, sometimes 6, if you're in a estuary, where they're trying to keep the lawn spreaders away from the lagoon or the shore.
Two houses down. Way more strict there.
Okay.
So, Sophia, do you have any other?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I just have maybe two questions. One is, I'm assuming that the project is going to be continuous through the two properties, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it will be continuous through the easement area, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, then my question becomes, who has the fee title to the easement area?
Great question. We looked into that, and there's language in the land court decree for number 4 that it basically says that as is conventional for private roads, the properties to each side of it own to the center line. So we have the way, which is Cottage Avenue, which is unconstructed as it goes across between these two properties.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the division, and then we have the association beach area that everybody in the area has rights to.
Okay, so let me just get this straight. That provision within the deed for Cottage Road?
It stands to reason that it also is assigned to number 5, but 5 is not registered.
Five
So,
is- But, I mean, the deed has to be recorded.
well, the deed is recorded.
And does the deed to 5 have anything about owning the easement road to the center?
Not that we've seen, I could double check. It actually, 5's deed actually infers, depending on how you read it, that they may own 50 feet farther out onto the beach. But so many people don't always know what they own. I hate to sound that way. But conventionally, when you have property on a private road and you don't see any contrary evidence that some other entity owns the road, it's conventional that the owner of the lot owns to the center line of the private way in front of their property. And the fact that 4 actually has a land court registration decree that speaks to that, we've basically inferred that the same would hold true for number 5.
Yeah, but there's no evidence of that.
No, but 5 and 4, if they didn't own the fee, they have the right to use it as a way.
Okay, but that's an easement right, not a fee title right.
For constructing a revetment?
Yeah, I mean,
I know
my
what you're saying, yeah.
concern is
Right.
that at some point during this project, if there is no evidence that, that both sides of the easement are owned by the adjacent properties, that there may be a third party that comes in that's going to
See-
have
I see
some
what you're
issues.
saying. And
Yeah,
taking that one step further, if we were to say it was a mystery, we would have an adverse possession claim on the part of number 5 because they've been maintaining that bulkhead for all these years.
but that claim has to be adverse to the property owner.
Well, I don't want to go there with you. If somebody were to disagree with that, for example,
Okay.
then you need the decree. But if nobody disagreed with it, then it kind of just stands that if you've been using something for all
Well,
that
I would
period.
just advise that you do further research and get a legal opinion,
I don't disagree with that.
before you proceed with the project, just for your own good, because if a third party came in with title to that during the process of the project, they may have the rights to stop the project or to require something to be done in that area.
And we did discuss this, and we did produce what evidence we had. And there's also the understanding of the owner. There's the absence of any other claimant over the last 30 years that has taken jurisdiction, except for those who have rights of passage.
Okay, but those are easement rights,
That's right.
not title.
Understood.
Okay.
And I appreciate that, and they are now informed, not only by me, but by you, that that's something they do need to be
Okay.
secure on.
And those are my only comments on the project. Now I'll ask whether anybody in the audience here has any further comments or questions on the project. Okay, hearing none, I'll ask if there's anybody online who has any further comments or questions on the project. Okay, then, yeah, go right ahead, and if you could come to the microphone and just identify yourself for the record.
My name is Ed Doherty. My family, my brother and I have own property on Northern Ave, which is part of the Beach Association. And a lot of people neighbors I've spoken with, support this project. It's a viable right-of-way to the beach that a lot of people use in the summertime. And actually, getting back to the discussion about the right-of-way, I grew up as a kid, and then when that wall went in the 70s, the association contributed to the portion of the wall that went through the right-of-way. So it doesn't seem like, I know there's some legalities with owns what, but I don't think there is going to be anyone coming out of the woodwork opposing this right-of-way.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for
Oh,
your comment.
and we are, as a past president of the association, we're always on the hunt for sand, so we have a big kitty. And every time we get a chance, we nourish that beach.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much for that information. Okay, then, based on all these comments, I just wanted to get a little bit of the consensus of the board, because there have been some comments with regard to the mitigation. And would the board like to see more effort on the mitigation before they take a vote?
If I could add discussion?
Yes, if you would, please, Brad.
So, and I apologize for not having this up on the screen, but the 2014 Google Earth image shows a buffer strip there, fully vegetated, about 10 to 11 feet in width. So that was replaced with the lawn come further towards the bulkhead sometime from 2014 to present. So I would say let's come up with some compromise between the 4-foot proposed and what was there before. And so that would, what I'd like to see put on the table and have that.
Can I add one thing?
If you could go to the microphone.
Could you please let Brad finish his comments first, and then I'll recognize you?
Oh, I'm fine. I would just, I guess I want to say, have that buffer strip planted with native species as we discussed. Sorry.
Okay, now, if you could just identify yourself for the
Thank you.
record, please?
Deborah Sullivan, owner of 4 Cottage Ave, one of the owners. By having the revetment, as Bob said, he had to talk us into the revetment versus the vertical wall, because the revetment is going to take 8, 10, 12 feet of our yard. And then on top of the worst case, 12 feet. And then if you add another 5 feet, that's a lot of land that you're taking away from our oceanfront house, yard. So, 4 or 5 feet is a lot, after we've already given away 8, 10, 12 feet of to do a better wall than what we have, which I agree, it is a better wall. So I just want you to consider exactly how much oceanfront lawn we're going to be losing. 4 feet is fine, whatever it has to be, but we're already losing probably 12 feet of our yard.
Excuse me, are you assuming that mitigation then takes away from your property, as opposed to being on your property?
No,
Okay.
having a stone revetment versus a vertical wall takes away
Okay,
maybe 10, 12 feet of our yard anyway. So we're already losing 10 or 12 feet. And then to have
so
bushes,
you're...
it's not taking away our yard.
So
it's
you would be objecting to additional mitigation?
Well, if we have to, we have to. But I just
Okay,
want considered that we're already losing 12 feet of our lawn, yard, whatever. And if you have another, how many feet of bushes, then that's usable yard that we couldn't use.
okay.
And we need to have some, obviously, but how much, it might be the question.
Okay, well, thank you for your comment.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Amy?
So I apologize, I didn't look at Google Earth or anything prior to viewing this, so that was kind of news, is that not that long ago, potentially, vegetation was removed without authorization to create lawn.
We did recreate it. There was just so many weeds in it, we said, let's start over, because
probably,
And we replanted Rose Rugosa.
okay,
If I might,
They were there, but
okay.
if I might, we
take
could
over.
maybe agree on a strip. I mean, like I said, and I'm certainly not trying to give their land away, but 5 feet is like the Yarmouth with a seawall in an estuary. There's ways to spread it out, make it thin here, a little more at the corners. I don't know if we could either continue this and come back in a couple of weeks with a revised mitigation pattern that was acceptable, or settle on something that would be more uniform, like a strip tonight. Otherwise, I would be looking about, and maybe just trying to fatten it up in the corners or something to get some area to.
So would you be in agreement to continuance?
Well, if they, do you have any objection to that? We're not going to build this tomorrow, so I know we.
I mean, when would our next meeting be, Amy?
2 weeks. It's actually a Thursday though, because of the holiday, so.
If the commission, I know that 4 was one thing. If 5 was acceptable, then perhaps they could close this tonight, but 5 is kind of a standard. And as I said, even though you have to watch the mower, but this grass doesn't get mowed much, it's dry in the summer. The 5-foot strip with maybe some flaring at the boundaries, we can't do that over by the right-of-way, but we may have the ability to satisfy Amy if we just said we had a 5-foot strip.
Okay. Yes, of course, Brad, go ahead.
So the top of the toe, is that a 12-foot, extension to the lawn? Is that the figure that's,
I would have to check. It's about 12. I'll tell you what as far as occupying the land with the revetment, it comes in from the steel that's there today, we're coming in 12 feet.
okay.
And we have, a textured stone buffering surface. And then the plant strip, we actually do have the ability to fatten that up a little bit on the west.
And on the east, it comes in, by the stairs, it comes.
It could
up
maybe
now.
bunch up a little bit
It
there
does.
too.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, we typically see
Yeah.
kind of on the property boundaries, it'd be a little bit wider than right in front,
So
with a couple
Okay.
groupings there.
I mean, I'm getting the consensus of the board that it might be a good idea if we continue this to our next hearing.
Just to see it on the plan.
Yeah, Amy, and what would the date of our next hearing be?
Next hearing, I think it's the 22nd.
The 22nd of February.
It's a Thursday.
Yeah, so it's like 2 weeks from tomorrow.
So we would need things by next Thursday.
Right,
And I'm happy
and
to
if-
talk to you.
I think I'll
If
be here.
if you and your clients could
Yeah,
give
thank
some
you.
thought and maybe work a little bit with Amy to see what additional things you could do
I think
with
we can- I
regard to
think we can make
mitigation,
a
that would be
change that will-
extremely helpful. And what I would also suggest, if you have time, is that you contact, a land use attorney and see whether or not you can get at least a preliminary opinion on, the ownership of the other half of the right-of-way.
There's a lot of members there. I'm sure there's a lot of information.
There may be a
available.
lot of information there that somebody has. I mean, for all we know, maybe the association owns that, which would make it very easy. But I think that would be just helpful for our final determination. So if you guys are in agreement with that, do I have a?
Sorry, can I
Yeah,
add one
of
thing?
course you can, Sophia.
I think perhaps, I don't know how much plant experience you have personally, but it might be good to consult a professional. I think there's it doesn't need to be seen as it doesn't have to be an impermeable, shrub, just
I've-
fortress. It can be something in the middle, something more inviting, something that doesn't need to be a complete end to the lawn, start to the wall of plants.
I've been actually doing mitigation plans, and I'm a civil engineer, but as you would guess from the type of work that civil engineers get on Cape Cod, especially in the coastal realm, for smaller, not complete garden plans, but I've got 40 years of not only personal involvement in gardening and horticulture, but I do a lot of coastal-related planting plans. We can come up with something that I think you'll like.
Sounds like you're the right person to do.
Well, I'm one of them.
Brad, go ahead.
If I can just add, so.
Of course you can.
Amy's gonna look into the history of that expansion of the lawn it's truly unauthorized, then for me, a compromise of a foot would not be enough.
Okay.
So you're proposing 4, even like a 6-foot, something that had some substantial habitat value. And I can't speak for the other members, but I think gaining a foot is not a lot, if in fact that lawn was put in without authorization.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Okay, do I have a motion with regard to continuing this hearing?
I'll move to continue.
I'll second that.
Okay, and I would just like, I'll now call for discussion on that motion. And as a proposed amendment, I would just amend this so that we continue to our meeting of February, what, Amy?
22nd.
22nd. Is that amendment acceptable to the maker and to the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, so I have an amended motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. We'll see
Thank
you in
you.
2 weeks.
Thank-
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a request for an extension, an extension for the order of conditions for 31 Shore Road, map 2, parcel B1-7, SE 32-2430. Amy, could you speak to this matter?
I actually think there's somebody here to speak on behalf of it, but
Oh,
I'd
okay, well,
otherwise be
fine,
happy
then we'll
to as
let them
well.
speak. Okay,
Sure,
so-
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering.
Sure.
On behalf of the applicant. This property at 31 Shore Road received an order of conditions just under 3 years ago. It expires February 25th, excuse me. So the order of conditions was issued for shoreline protection. And the initial order of conditions, the work was completed. And we subsequently filed a request for an amended order of conditions. And that amended order of conditions was issued a year ago, which included additional shoreline protection in the form of coir rolls and coir blankets and beach grass. And it also included a request to move a stairway to the beach and to reconstruct a platform that was at the top, a slope at the edge of the yard. And so since that, portions of that work were also completed, but not the entire project as approved by the commission. And since that time, in December, those couple of large storm events have done some significant damage to the shorefront at this property. And so we're respectfully requesting a 1-year extension of the existing most current amended order of conditions. And in a very short order, we propose to request another amended order, which would provide some enhanced protection to the shoreline at this location. There's portions of the property that have large stones, sort of an informal revetment. There's other portions where there are some boulders buried beneath the sand. Amy was good enough to meet us at the site maybe 6 weeks or so ago. And so we're just requesting an extension to keep this. It's very similar, work to what we've proposed in the past, but the order would expire without this extension on February 25th, and so we would like to be able to, come in with a request for amendment as opposed to trying to tie the knot on the prior one and come in with a brand new notice of intent.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have any analysis on this matter?
I would recommend a 1-year extension.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'll ask for any comments from members of the board. I'll start with Sophia.
No comments.
Brad?
None.
No comment.
Wayne, Mark, and I have no comments. Are there any comments from members of the audience? Any comments from anybody else online? Okay, hearing no comments, I would ask for a motion on this.
I'll move to grant the one-year extension.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries unanimously. You have your one-year extension.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, the next item, again, is a request for an extension permit for an order of conditions. Excuse me, on 18 Captain Todd Way, map 103, parcel W1-21, SE32-2437. You have anybody in the audience to speak on this application? Hearing none. Amy, do you have any analysis on this request?
Yep, and I would just state that probably should look at the other one. It's the same address, and it's for a dock. So there's two extensions in front of you for the same address. The first one was for the house. It was issued in 2021. The construction has not started yet. The owners would like a 3-year extension. They hope to start this summer. And then for the other one, again, it's a dock on Long Pond. It was issued 3 years ago. This is their first extension request. They just had a hard time getting the projects started right after COVID and getting everything lined up and everything. So I would recommend a 3-year extension for each
Okay.
of the SE numbers.
Okay, then, if nobody has any objections, I will also open the discussion on the second matter, which Amy has already commented on, which is 18 Captain Todd Way, map 103, parcel W1-21, SE32-2438. Now, does anybody on the board have any comments on either of these matters? I'll start with Mark.
I have no remarks.
Wayne?
No comment.
Brad?
Nope.
Sophia?
None.
Okay, hearing no comments, I would ask for a vote, and I would like the vote to include, both of the requests for extension on the order of conditions.
I'll move to grant a 3-year extension for SC 32, 2437, and 2438.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of January 18th, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Or does anybody want a little bit more time to review those?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes, please.
I'll give you 3, Brad.
And then after we do that, Mr. Chairman, after we do the minutes, can we skip to the little library so that they don't have to wait for?
Yes, we certainly can, Amy.
Very brief meeting.
I was told in by 8 o'clock, but I don't think we're going to make it.
That'd be impressive.
Next meeting is beefy. We haven't seen one like that in a while. I shouldn't have said that, you're not gonna wanna come. Call me at the 11th hour. Hey, where's Zach?
No comments.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Anybody else have any comments? Sophia?
No comments.
Wayne?
No comment.
Mark?
No.
And I have no comments. Can I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved unanimously. Okay, as Amy requested, the next item is a discussion and possible vote on a number of items. And I will take first the installation of a little library by the Harwich Garden Club at Thompson's Field. Do I have anybody to speak to this matter? Would you please come either to the table or the podium and introduce yourself for the record?
Mara Costa, member of the Garden Club, and I think that you've gotten a description of it.
Yep.
And
Yes, that was passed
Professional.
out to us in advance,
Okay,
yes,
all
thank
right.
you.
So, any questions at all, or
Just a little background, they'd like to do a little
it's a lending library?
lending
yeah.
Yeah,
library
could
at
you just give a
Thompson's
brief
Field.
description for the record?
Right, it'd just be a fairly, not too large of a box with some pamphlet holders on the outside and some shelves on the inside for children's books, other books, magazines, mostly having to do with nature, we hope, and conservation and pollinators and that kind of thing. And we would go and check it, occasionally to see if anything needs to be replenished or taken out. There are a lot of them around town, but I think that this might be the first one on a conservation site, so that's why we're coming to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Amy, do you have any analysis on this matter?
So it's at the Thompson's Field Conservation Area off the Chatham Road entrance. So if you start to walk, start to walk down the path there on the right-hand side, there's a bench, and to my knowledge, it's right around there that they wish to install it.
Right.
And the garden club would maintain it. So the land is your care and custody, so I said they had to get your blessing. And I think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll go to comments from members of the commission. Sophia?
It sounds wonderful. Have my blessing.
Thank you.
Brad?
No comments.
Okay, I only have questions.
Okay.
One is, how often will you be checking this facility, especially with regard to if there's any potential vandalism to the,
Right. Certainly through the seasons where it's more active, every week to just one of us stop by and see how things
Okay.
are.
And how will you handle the issue if there is vandalism? Would you then replace it, or would you just remove it?
You mean completely destroyed?
Well,
Yeah.
not completely
I mean,
destroyed, but
the-
certain types of vandalism to it.
Right, I think whatever extent it was, we would get in touch with the person who is going to build it for us and, maybe get their opinion if there is some damage to it.
Okay. And are you going to have any reason to control the content of this facility?
We're hoping to control it by the books that we collect or that are donated to us first, and then put them, in the library.
Okay.
With a sticker that would say, the purpose, to read it, replace it, or, return it.
Okay, so individuals will not be able to just donate directly to this facility?
Right.
Okay, and will that be made clear someplace on the facility?
I think, yes, I think it will. Because,
Okay,
yes.
could you come to the podium and just identify yourself for the
Yes.
record, please?
Jerry Schuman. I'm on the committee with Maura and a dozen other people.
Okay, my question was would individuals be able to contribute to this directly by placing something in the facility without going through your organization?
Well, we hope that it will happen that way, but this is why we will check, and especially at the beginning to make sure that we're going to have a notice there that says, we want material on pollinators, nature, birds, butterflies, gardening, and it's restricted to that, and there'll be a notice right on there that says, and then when we check, we'll remove anything that's not there. People, they'll know when they add something that they're leaving it at their own risk. Do you know what I mean? There won't be a food fight over it, I don't think, because people have so many books that they want to donate, especially these large, like coffee table books on gardening. We have a space for large books like that. I think people will I think they'll cooperate, but we will check it. And I'm around the corner, I can check it more than once a week.
Yeah,
Just to make sure we don't have any naughty books in there or anything that don't.
Whatever, I'll leave that to you. In the beginning, it would be helpful to check it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, both for vandalism and for content.
The
Right.
garden club's there because they manage that garden, so they're there daily or every
Yeah,
other
there are
day
garden
anyway.
Yes,
so-
that's true.
That
Yeah.
are there.
So it's,
you.
And you would hope that people going down the path there would be for a good purpose.
you would hope.
Yes.
Wayne, do you have any comments?
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mark?
Are you going to bring us books?
Yeah.
I'll look through my supply.
Okay. Amy, do we need some type of vote on
Yes,
this?
please, because it's a new activity on your land. So
So,
vote to let the garden club install the little library at Thompson's Field.
okay. So, do I have an affirmative motion with regard to this matter?
You do.
Okay. So, the affirmative motion will be as Amy read. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor and a second. Do I have any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Amy.
your installation.
Yes, we will.
Let us know when, or let me know when it goes up, please.
Yeah,
It will be before planting time.
okay. Okay, now we'll go back to the agenda. The next item on the agenda for discussion and possible vote is the signing of the intermunicipal agreement with Cape Cod Tech High School for 374 Main Street. Now, this item had been discussed at previous meetings, and it was actually voted upon. So unless anybody on the commission has any further discussion, I don't think we need any discussion on this matter.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay.
Well, if there's no discussion, don't go far.
Yeah, there's no discussion. So then I think it's just the actual signature of the document. And Amy, could you just do that by sort of passing it along, and we can,
We can do it that way, yes.
yeah, as opposed to doing it individually. And then we can, while you're doing that, we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
So just to keep, Wayne, you can come back in. There's tabs where you need to sign. There's several pages, please.
Okay.
And I'm gonna have to, ask John, who's not here, to sign, because we need 4. If anybody elects not to sign.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then I'd like to move on to the next item while we're signing that. And that's a banner at Bell's Neck Conservation Area requested by the Community Preservation Committee. Is there anybody here to speak for the Community Preservation Committee? Okay, hearing none. Amy, could I have your analysis of this request?
Sure, the CPC would like to place a banner at the Bell's Neck Conservation Land. They're trying to put banners around town on projects or locations that CPC money has been granted to. So the banner, from my understanding, it's either 2 feet by 4 feet or 3 feet by 5 feet. It's white and blue, and if it is that size, so we're thinking at the Herring Ladder off of Depot to install it there, just to put it on the heavy-duty post and rail fence that we already have down there. CPC has granted the Conservation Department money for managing, has helped manage that area. So I would recommend that you let them do it, and that if it is vandalized, that we will be allowed to remove it.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Now I'll go to comments from members of the commission. I'll start with Mark.
No, I have no comments.
Wayne?
No comment.
Okay, my concern about this is that while Amy has given a description as to what she thinks it is, there's nobody here to actually show us what it's going to look like. And I have seen what I think is going to be a similar banner in another location in town, and I really had some concerns about it. And my question to the to the Community Preservation Committee would be, couldn't it be more of a sort of permanent sign similar to what's adjacent to the library at the corner of Bank Street and Main Street here in Harwich? And unfortunately, we don't have anybody to speak to that tonight. So personally, and again, I can be overruled by other members of the commission, I am concerned about voting on this until we have a discussion of what it's going to look like. Okay, Brad?
I don't feel like mincing words right now. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's gonna
Okay.
disappear in short order. It's gonna be in some kid's basement before you know it.
Or blow away.
College dorm room.
Yeah, it's not gonna last. Why not a nice plaque, lag it into the concrete?
I agree.
A sign will get beat up as well. A banner at that location, people, I just think it's not gonna last. So, good intentions, so I don't mean to be gruff about it, but I don't think it's gonna stay. And I'm assuming that town funds will pay for it.
I believe they've
Well,
already been
community
made, but I'm not
preservation
sure.
funds will
Yeah.
probably pay for it.
Yeah, so that's my thought. By all means, put something up. Maybe it's a bronze plaque, maybe it's
Yeah.
something more permanent.
Sophia?
Did I hear you say they've already been made?
They may have already been made. I had no part in any of that. I'm not positive they have, or not. I do know, I share your sentiment that it's very windy down there too. Can get beaten up by the elements. Unless we could somehow put it underneath, like if it's small enough, and I don't know exactly how big it is, underneath the kiosk, on the back side of the kiosk where we don't have anything to protect it a little bit from the elements. But I am curious, and I can chat with CPC about this. Over at the library, right on the corner here, there's a small sign. It's white and blue, and it says, preserved with the help of CPC funds, and it's hard. So something like that could be mounted on a post or something like that, rather than a banner. But I'm happy to put this back on the next agenda and try to get more information and maybe get somebody to speak to it.
Yeah, we should know what it's gonna say
Yeah.
before we approve it.
Yeah, if it's the consensus of the committee, Amy, if you could have
We'll
some
just table it,
discussions
yep.
with them and ask one of them to be present and to, whether it's in a photograph or whether they bring it in, whether they show us something that what they intend to put there, and we can have the discussion with them that we've had among ourselves tonight.
Sure thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the next item on the agenda is the revisions to the Bell's Neck Land Management Plan. And Amy, I think you've been working on that. Could you give us just a status report on where you are?
And I don't expect you to, it's hot off the presses today with a ton of edits. So I don't expect us to have, but I did want to try to get you something by the meeting. Realized I did not put it in Dropbox before the meeting, but I gave you paper copies. I'm still not satisfied with sections 5 and 6. I think they're very redundant, and I want to try to rework those. But I did want to show you the progress that's been made, and the additions that you've each had have been installed in there, and we're moving along. So, again, I don't expect you to review it sitting here tonight. Brad, I inserted your climate change stuff and other things. Sophia, I did not find the list, but I went through the list, and honestly, I hadn't been through the list of species in such a long time. It was so apparent to me, based on walking the property so often, of the populations of things that are actually there that are not on this list. So I think I captured hopefully most of the ones that you probably were alluding to, that I, but we can certainly take a more of a look there too. So yeah, it continues to, I do want to fine tune sections 5 and 6. I'm thinking of combining them in some way. So section 5 is management goals and environmental impacts. So keep in mind goals, and then you scoot over to section 6, and it's 5-year maintenance summary, which to me, I mean, those are your goals to do within 5 years. So those need to be married a little bit better, because when you read both sections, they're very redundant and not necessary. So I'm gonna restructure that a little bit, and finish working on the appendices. But I think that the language is all here that we might want in here. It's just a matter of how to organize it better. So I wanted to get you a new rough draft and see what your thoughts are. You don't have to be tonight. And I can email you a clean copy as well, because sometimes it's hard to read if there's any track changes in it.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy, and thank you for your efforts
No,
on
I'm
this.
sorry it's taking so long.
That's all right. You've been
A lot of
involved in a
work.
lot. Okay, what I'd like to do is ask any of the members of the commission if they have any comments or questions they want to discuss tonight. Sophia?
Sure. I am happy to go through, I think there has to be some sort of paper trail to what I sent. I mean,
There was an email and it alluded to it, like, thanks, I got your email.
I can't believe I don't have a copy of it.
I can't believe I
So-
don't either.
Okay, well, good job, both of us. I think I can cobble something together again. If it takes another quick trip down there, that's great.
Fine, and those lists can be evolving as
Yeah.
well, and I think those species lists, I almost think fit better as an appendix to this report rather than in the body, but you can tell me what you think.
I agree with that.
That's all.
Okay, Brad?
Yep, so thanks, Amy, for bringing this back. And I agree about consolidating section 5 and 6. And I think some of the updates, I haven't read your updates yet, but some of these may be for topics that could be removed, maybe entirely. So I think.
I didn't want to remove anything without you letting, so I think that's a productive discussion to have next time, because I think there are some things that are irrelevant now.
Yeah, but I think it's good. I think you're zeroing in on cleaning up 5 and 6 to spell out objectives. And, yeah, did you get my TMDL, nitrogen TMDL
Thought I did.
language? I didn't see that, and then
I will look,
and then I also produced a map, a GIS map. And I wondered if you have any thoughts, if that needs to be revised, or if it's,
all right, let me look.
Yep.
I have been having issues with my email, been finding out that I'm not getting everything, so.
I had 3 tasks on my list, and one was the nitrogen TMDL reference, climate change reference, then a GIS map.
Yeah, I know, I've definitely got the climate
So
change
you
one.
got
I
the
got it.
last one, it's in here.
Yeah,
And again,
all right, I'll
it's a draft.
check tomorrow.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Is that it, Brad? Okay, thank you. Wayne?
No, no comment.
Mark?
No remarks.
Okay, and I have no further comments.
I have something very important.
Okay?
How do you like the picture?
Love it.
So pretty. A plus.
It's new.
It's perfect.
Take
Thank
him
you.
back, take him back.
You took it.
Yeah,
Thank you, Amy.
of the reservoir.
Thank you. Okay, are there any additional items for discussion for this evening?
I just have one question.
Go ahead, Wayne.
When you started talking with those folks about who owns what on that road down there, is that really, it may be something new on the Conservation Commission, but that's real, I don't see that's any of our business. What's the guidelines or the rules of the Conservation Commission as to people's property rights?
So property ownership is really not our purview. If they have applied and claiming they own something and they don't, ultimately, the onus is on them. But, I mean, it is optimal that we have, the proper owners applying for projects on their property.
Like you said, it's up
But
to
it's
them.
ultimately their
They're responsible.
responsibility if they do it, and
I
their
appreciate
liability.
your
Absolutely, yeah.
legal knowledge of land and that sort of stuff. But I didn't really see that that was any of our business, to be honest with you.
Well, my position, Wayne, is that we should not approve something for an applicant who doesn't own the property unless there is an agreement with the property owner. Because we are then placing our legal approval on something that is going to be done illegally. And I don't think we should be doing
Yeah, that's a
that.
valid point, I guess. Yeah,
Okay, that's my position,
Mhm.
you know.
but you're the resident lawyer on that stuff.
Right. Okay, any other things that we should be discussing this evening? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second? I have a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all that in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Aye.